Tala falava, kia ora, and welcome to the Reads with Rosa podcast. Yesterday marked the beginning of Matariki, the Māori New Year, a time of remembrance, reflection, and renewal. We acknowledge the tangata whenua of Aotearoa and wish everyone a happy and safe Matariki. Okay, fam, if you cannot tell, I am freaking out just a little bit. I am so excited. On today's show, we have a very special guest. She is a New Zealander of Te Ātiawa, Ngāti Tūwharetoa, Ngāti Rangatahi, Matakore, and Pākehā descent. Her novels include The Imaginary Lives of James Pōneke and Where the Rekohu Bone Sings. In 2016, her short story Black Milk won the Commonwealth Short Story Prize, Pacific Region. She also co-edited Black Marks on the White Page, an anthology that celebrates Māori and Pasifika writing with witi ihemaira. Her novels, essays, and short stories have won recognition in Aotearoa, and she has been the recipient of several writers' residencies and awards. She teaches creative writing at the International Institute of Modern Letters, Te Herenga Waka Victoria University of Wellington. It is my honor to welcome to the show writer and educator Tina Makereti. Woo!
Oh, kia ora,
Oh my gosh, welcome, kia ora.
Kia ora.
This is
Ngā
insane.
mihi.
How are you, Tina?
I'm really good. It is Matariki, so it's lovely to be speaking to you on Matariki. It's lovely to be speaking to you, to be introducing this book at this time of year. So yeah, I couldn't be better. Just walked around the city last night, or Tautahi, and there were all the light shows and the city was humming with people walking around. And I just thought, man, when we were kids, I would have been so blown away by this, beautiful artworks by our local Pasifika and Maori artists, and kids walking along the streets singing Māori, waiata Māori about Matariki. Yeah, and then today we're going to have a bit of a whānau feast. So yeah, it's nice to be here at this time of year.
I'm excited. I'm so excited, and
thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. It's such an honor. Before we get into our talanoa, into our korero, I do like to ask our guests for a brief introduction. I like to say that I give the official bio, but this is an opportunity to give a more, intimate self-introduction. Please go ahead.
Those iwi are from obviously from Taranaki, from Taupo, from the top of the South Island, and from Fielding. But I grew up all over the North Island. I was actually, when I was 2, my parents split and my father took me and my sister away from our Māori whānau. And so I didn't come back to the whānau until I was 16. And we spent a lot of time traveling around the North, not traveling, but just living in different places in the North Island. And so I guess my origin story, if we want to start there, is really not knowing who I was. And I think that's really quite a very common story from my generation, I guess Generation X onwards, and probably before my generation too. But that particular story of Māori and Pākehā having children together, and then the children not really getting, I guess, a strong sense of who they were in Te Ao Māori. So I was lucky enough when I was 16 to break away from that, or my sister found out whānau again, and we came back into the fold, and that was an incredible journey of like a kind of flourishing the puawai, of understanding myself as a Māori person, going to university. So education, I guess, has been the thing that helped me back into that world, which is quite funny because obviously for a lot of Māori, education is a clash with Te Ao Māori. For me, it was a window into Te Ao Māori because I hadn't had my whānau growing up. So I went to university, I learned a bit of te reo, I learned a bit about the culture. I had whānau at the university. So my uncle, Sir Mason Jury, was the head of school at Massey University at that time. I was always too shy to say he was my uncle. And then like I thought I was claiming something big, which I was. And then, you know, whenever I missed it, whenever I didn't say it, he'd say, "What Tina didn't tell you is," you know, so so I learned, you know, I learned that it's different in Te Ao Māori, that, you know, whānau is whānau. I don't know where that story came from, but it was lovely to come into an educational setting, and that was, so I guess that's why I'm comfortable in those settings. And I know a lot of us aren't, but that might be why teaching in that setting, learning about my culture in that setting, learning about writing in that setting has been a huge part of my life, because home life was never comfortable or safe. So sometimes those educational settings can be. There's probably enough personal information about me.
How long have you been teaching at tertiary level?
So I started teaching. Well, I was kaitautoko Māori for a few years, in like 2005. I came back to Aotearoa from overseas, and I did that for a few years, and then I did the Masters of Creative Writing, and kind of straight onto that. So I did undergrad creative writing at Massey, which you can do by distance. So it's really helpful for getting that first step and first kind of reaching out and figuring out if this is for you. So I did that, and one of the teachers there, who's a really good friend of mine now, Ingrid Horrocks, she kind of said, "Do you want to come and help teach this course?" while she was doing some research. So so that was 2009. I started teaching creative nonfiction, and then from there I've just kind of taught every year. I had a couple of years where I was doing other things, like I was curator Māori at the Museums Wellington. But I started teaching the Masters of Creative Writing at the IIML, International Institute of Modern Letters at Victoria, or Te Herenga Waka University, in 2020. So this is actually it's my 5th year this year of teaching that course. Yeah, which is the course that I took. So yeah, it's lovely having that continuity, and also just having that Māori face at the school now is really hopefully encouraging for Māori and Pasifika Indigenous people to come and do the course that way. I mean, learn creative writing that way if that's what they want to do.
Yeah, do you go into studying creative writing? Like, did you go into it with that mindset of like, down the track or sooner, I actually want to write? Like, I want to write a book, my own novel. Is that the thinking, or is it just that you were just super passionate about writing, like creative writing?
Yeah, it's a good story actually. That I was in my mid-30s. I just got out of a quite bad relationship. I had 2 beautiful children. I had a job. I was doing okay, but I kind of said to myself, okay, so this is the start of another life, right? Like, I'm stepping out into the world now. What do I want to do with it? And like, what would I do if I could do anything in the world? And I'm not everybody has this, but I was lucky enough to go like that very clearly. I would write. That was clear. If you know what you really want, that's the first step, right? So I did. So then I thought, well, how do I do that? Because I tried before, and I hadn't been able to finish anything. And the big thing, I don't know if you've ever heard Neil Gaiman always talks about it, the big thing to do is to finish something. I'd never been able to do that. So I thought, well, how do I do this? And the thing that existed at New Zealand universities, and this was 2007, I took my first course, I think, was creative writing courses, which didn't exist when I was an undergraduate. So so I was like, okay, I'll take a course and see where that gets me. And if I get good feedback from that, I might, keep going, and I might know that I'm onto something. Like, I had no idea whether I could do it. I mean, I felt it, I felt it, but that's a different thing than the practical, like I say, finishing something. You've got to finish something. So I did the course. I did a couple of courses, and yeah, it made sense to me. I did okay. I got affirmation. I also got critical feedback that I needed to get from from, there's something here, but I don't know how to finish a story, or I don't know how to shape a story. I needed that real critical feedback to help me get to step up. And I could have done that by myself, but really there was so much that learning at university helped me with, for, legitimacy. I'm a single mum. I can't just spend all my time writing without saying, oh, look, I've got a course, I'm doing a course. It's, like I needed that for myself. I needed to tell myself I was doing something practically useful, but also I needed deadlines. I needed to know, I just needed structure, and it really accelerated my learning quite fast. So I threw away, if you kind of show up willing to get rid of stuff, which I was, I threw away a lot of bad habits. I threw away a lot of illusions I had about what I was doing. Like the biggest illusion I threw away was that that helped me was that I should know what I'm doing. So people think writers kind of know what they're doing, and they're making this big, where I guess that's how writers get elevated in people's minds. They write a thing and they think, that's amazing. How did they do that? Well, most of the time the writer doesn't know. Lots of practical stuff, but you're kind of going into the unknown with your little writing tools and going, okay, what is the story? What is this? Like, the story's telling itself to me. I'm not making up the story. If I'm in the right space, that's how I work. So just kind of getting out of my own way, and it's not all about my mind, because my mind is like, I'm smart, but I'm not that smart. Like, stories are magical machines that know much more than what we do. So if we just go to the story with our best tools, sometimes the story sounds a bit woo-woo, but the story tells us what it is.
You wrote your first novel in 2014 then. So, I mean, Where the Reko Who Burns Sings, and it's a novel about confronts complexity of being Moriori, Māori, and Pākehā. Some of the central themes are loss, change, ethnic identity, and belonging. Are there any connections, as you're writing that story, it's your first novel, are there any connections with that story and just your own journey? Like, you've already kind of spoken about some of your journey, with cultural identity, with the real, finding a sense of belonging.
Yeah, 100%. All of my work is in some way related to that. So just to backtrack a bit, I did have the book of short stories that came out in 2010. So the short stories, just really for the listeners, writing short stories is a wonderful way to learn to write, and I would recommend that as a really good step. And I'm actually, my next book's going to be short stories because I just love them. But then, writing a novel. So it came out of when my second daughter was born, my mother gave me a name for her from the whānau. So we always have kind of whānau names as our middle names. And it was, I won't go into the details of that, but she said this comes from the Moriori ancestor. And I was like, Moriori ancestor? Like, I'd heard this all my life, that we'd had this Moriori connection, but I thought, well, if she's going to carry that name, we should know who that is. And so I started this writing project. I didn't know if it was going to be fiction or non-fiction, but quickly became fiction because so much of the story of Moriori people had been, I guess, suppressed and eradicated. That, you can write, of course you can write non-fiction about that, but I wanted to go more into that question of identity and who are we if these things have been lost or purposefully colonized or gotten rid of or whatever happened. And so I'd grown up with this idea that we had a Moriori ancestor, but I'd also grown up with all of these myths that we have in Aotearoa about what happened there with the Moriori people. The first myth being that Moriori were in New Zealand, Aotearoa, before Māori, and Māori came along and eradicated them. None of that is true, but that was the story I was brought up with. So Moriori are the mana whenua, the tangata whenua of Rekohu, of the Chatham Islands, and after the British came with their ships, after the whalers and sealers came, and other people, a couple of particular tribes that I'm related to as well from Taranaki, got on one of those ships, one of those British ships, and were taken over to the Rikohu Chatham Islands, and that's when they kind of saw that whenua and said, okay, we're getting pushed out of our land by all of this gun violence, all of this, the land wars that were happening. This land is occupied by these very peaceful, friendly people, but we could take it off them, and we could be here. So this is the actual story. And I was like, I never heard that story growing up. So in order to tell the story of, I wasn't going to tell the story of my tupuna or my daughter's tupuna, but to tell that story of what does it mean to be descended from a Moriori person now, and why don't we know those stories? I had to go somehow tell that story, somehow get that story, and how that was much more complex than people think. It involves a whole nother group of islands that we don't even talk about a lot of the time in Aotearoa. So I had this amazing, wonderful journey of going to Rikohu, meeting Moriori people there. I never found my hoko papa. I never, Moriori word for whakapapa. I never found that connection, and I thought that was really interesting, because what I did find was definitely a connection with my Taranaki ancestors going there. And I thought, isn't that interesting? Because I felt, I don't know why our family carries the story. I don't know where that story came from, but it felt a little bit like a kind of an interesting, I don't want to use the wrong word, but reciprocity, that I'm now telling this story. And I had to privilege the Moriori point of view, because they are the ones who have had it the worst in terms of the stories that are told, the way the histories are, the inaccuracies, the things that have been taken from them. So I'm always going to kind of, when you tell a story, I tried to give the Taranaki side as well, but you can't always, you've got to privilege, someone's point of view has to be at the heart of it. And I knew that I couldn't tell that story without making them the heart of it. Still don't know the basis of that story in my own family, but it gave me the opportunity also to write about what it is to be a white-skinned Māori who is just a bit confused about all of the whakapapa, and how to be those things when you haven't been brought up in those places.
I mean, no doubt you're probably more comfortable now, being, people might consider, oh, she's white. Really? Is she Māori? Questioning that part of your identity. But surely you must have struggled with those, questioning that, questioning like that sense of belonging as you were maybe even at university.
Yeah, for sure. And if I remember my first day, the first pōwhiri I ever went to, it was to a university pōwhiri. And there was a korero there, and unfortunately I can't remember what is that, who that was. But I basically went up to him and said, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm doing here, in a manner of speaking. I lost all of this. And he said, you're one of ours. You belong here. You've got, and I've been told that over and over by the old, especially by our kaumātua. You got the whakapapa, it doesn't matter how much you know. It's more what I know, I think, that it's more than having white skin, because there's so many white skinned Māoris now. You got to be careful. You got to be careful about the assumptions you make about people.
Right.
So it's more just not feeling like I had the upbringing that other kids had, that I know things. I'm much better now. Like, I'm 50 now, so. But I mean, still in recent years, I've had to have that support from home. Like, I went home and we had a karanga workshop, and I wrote a story about this actually, where a woman, one of our kuia, said, you're home now, you can't make mistakes. And I thought, this is ridiculous. This is like such a powerful thing to internalize, that when you're at home you can't make mistakes. But how long has it taken me till middle age to be able to actually feel it? Like, I've been told that over and over. So I do try to tell anyone I'm teaching or any of our young people the same thing. You got the whakapapa. It doesn't matter what you don't know. I'm more concerned about that, I think, because a lot of us, I think the whakamā is so deep. We all go into these settings and we feel so deeply uncomfortable and ashamed, as if, you know, because we don't know stuff. It's not our fault that we don't know stuff. That's colonization doing its work. Like, it's done a good job. And some of us can be brown as, and that's still got that shame of not knowing enough. So yeah.
Whoa, that great. Creative process. What is your starting point when you are about to write? When you're about to start a piece of work, whether it be an essay or a short story or a novel, which is an even bigger project, like, where is the starting point? I don't want to say, is it the deadline from the publishers? Yeah, what is, yeah.
Well, luckily for me, we don't, I mean, luckily or unluckily, we don't really make that much money down here in the Antipodes. So we don't really have publishers saying, here's your deadline, because they're like, send me a book, and if we can make something of it, brilliant, but they're not going to be on your, a lot of the stuff they have on TV is really hilarious when they have a writer who's driving a Ferrari and has a big, beautiful house, and they've got an assistant, and then someone's like, get that deadline. I'm like, whose life is this? It's not any writer I know. But anyway, it's hilarious and kind of funny, and it's fun to play with that idea. But so for it's carrying the idea around in your head for quite a while, I think, is where it starts. So the Mires started before the terror attacks on the Christchurch mosques, and I don't, like, I say this, and it's not a big, like, it's not like a big, oh, aren't I brilliant? I think anyone that was paying attention at that time would have thought, something's coming. This is not good. It was happening overseas. So it was weird, you know, you would have noticed at the time and afterwards, people have said, you know, we knew, those communities knew, those communities were asking for help. So in my head, I was also kind of carrying around the story of a terrorist attack. Now, that's not what the book became, because once I saw that in action, I was like, you know, it slowly became clear that that is not something to repeat on paper. I didn't want to do that. But it was certainly that threat of extremism, that threat of white supremacy, the way the world was being more and more fractured and more binary, like more and more extreme in opinions, even those middle of the road opinions becoming more and more yelling at each other. So I was carrying that around in my head for a few years before I sat down to write, because quite often you don't have time to write, you're still making a living. So by the time I had time to write, I'd been thinking about this for a few years. But usually it starts with thinking, like, I've got a collection of short stories in my head at the moment. At the heart of it, it is how do I write as a Māori person? How do I write and just experience the joy and creativity and fun of writing? What does that look like? I would have no clue. I've always to this point had too many stories to tell that were too urgent and too many worries about what was happening to us and our wider communities to just have fun as a writer. But now, after what has happened for the last few years, both personally and in the world, I've written this book that's got quite a lot of political themes in it. Not that themes aren't the most important thing in a book, they just are there. But now I think, how would you be truly liberated? And so thinking about freedom, and as a writer, for me, the most powerful thing an Indigenous person can do, and I'm not the only one that says this is something people talk about a lot, is to write into the joy and the freedom of a creative project. And it's still going to be, I think it's still going to be dark, like that can be fun. It's still going to have the world in it, I think it might have a touch of horror, which is weird for me because it'll be a bit gothic because I'm a real scaredy cat. So, so I don't know where that came from, but the world is in a dark place. So I think maybe working out dark things in a fun way might equal horror. But yeah, just to have, I always kind of verge on the speculative anyway. So, yeah, so that's where it comes from. It just kind of sits around in your head for a while, and you look around at the world. And I'm trying to make note of things now for the short stories. But
yeah, do you use your phone? Do you use your phone, or are you iPad, laptop, notebook?
I used to be so good at carrying around a notebook, which is a better, more beautiful thing. But actually, I do use Notes app quite a lot now. And then I've got notes and diaries and stuff. And then I'm like, where's that note? And no, it's not tidy. So I have to get my act together that way.
I mean, since you mentioned the Mires, let's get into it. I just want to read the synopsis. 3 women give birth in different countries in different decades. In the near future, they become neighbors in a coastal town in Aotearoa, New Zealand. We have a single parent, Kerry. She has her hands full with a 4-year-old Teroe Woti and teen Wairere, a strange and gifted child who always picks up on stuff that isn't hers to worry about. They live next door to Janet, who is a white woman with an opinion about everything, and new arrival Sarah, whose family are refugees from ecological devastation in Europe. And you say here, I wanted to write about people's personal lives and relationships and the way the big things that happen in the world begin and end locally in our homes and neighborhoods. The Mires, how the finished product from beginning to end. Was it a great feeling to finally get it done, shipped off to the
It is a great
publishers?
feeling. Yeah. Writing isn't. I love writing, but it's where the Reko Who Bone Sings was deeply uncomfortable a lot of the time because I felt such a weight of responsibility because there is very little written about that story, and a sense of unworthiness to be someone who's written a story about that and all of that stuff, which I would tell other people not to feel. Like I would say, don't feel that way. You don't need to feel that way. But of course we do. We feel that whakama. And I'm really glad I'm so grateful for that book. It's The Imaginary Lives of James Poneke. Again, it's a historical story that's saying a lot of big stuff. Now, the Mires is saying a lot of big stuff too, but for some reason, I'm just happy about this book, which I haven't been about my book before. Usually I'm just too uncomfortable about it I'm like, oh yeah, and then I'm just doing my little whakama thing. But the Mires, I guess because we'd been through 2020. I wrote this in 2022. I'd had breast cancer in 2021. And I'd already gone into that space where I'm going to live life in, I guess, the way that's, I guess when you go through stuff like that, whether it was all of us going through 2020, I don't know what it was like for you, but for lots of people I know it was, I'll try not to swear. And that was for not just COVID. I felt like a lot of stuff was happening on a lot of different levels for people. I felt a little bit like a lot of my illusions about things were shattered in that year. And then I was sick the following year because I'd been working myself into the ground for like those reasons that we do that stuff. And you kind of think, it goes right back to the childhood, chronic stress. You think you're doing stuff for a good reason. You think you're making the world better. And then you realize, hey, wait a minute, maybe making the world better is looking after myself. And at the time I saw someone posted on Twitter, what if our ancestors' greatest dreams is for us to rest? And I was like, oh my God. And so there has been, again, it's not just me, there has been this korero about, hey, resting is important. Like, do we have to, and for the purpose of our liberation as the many peoples who are oppressed by capitalist colonialism or whatever, however you want to be, do we need to grind ourselves into the ground? So I'd already come to this kind of point of, man, getting off track here, but I'd already gotten to this
You're
point of
fine.
wanting the work to be a place of joy and to say something to the world, but also to be, I don't know, a solace for myself and for other people. So yeah, I'm really happy about, I guess, because you never, like I say, we don't know what we're doing when we're doing it. And I'd have readers, you know, a close friend of mine said, because when you talk about the themes of it, extremism, white supremacy, ecological disaster, that sounds like a terrible time, right? But a friend of mine said it's a hopeful novel. And she was writing, you know, she's I will name her because she's amazing, Katarina Gray-Sharp, and she did her PhD on our responsibility in the face of extinction. So she knows, you know, she knows about this stuff. And she said it was hopeful, and I was like, that meant a lot to me, because I thought, okay, I'm putting something into the world that that I can feel positive about. And yeah, I think it comes from a different place than the other work in that way. Yeah.
Perhaps it's just you evolving as a writer. There's been
It
more
could be.
growth, lived experiences,
Yeah.
and because there are those important messages, you know, in the Mires, and it is truly a story of. There is a lot of hope there, right? Like, yeah, like if you are listening right now, if you're watching via YouTube, click the links in the bio. Connect with Tina Makereti. We've got a website there. There'll be links for you to get the book. It's actually coming out next week, but this will drop when it's released. So you have no excuses, fam. If you are listening or watching, click the links, buy the book, connect with Tina through social media. Read the Mires. You will not regret it. But you can also, there'll be links there for Tina's other work, her other published books as well. So please check it out. Yes. So, you know, the environment, you know, standing against forms of, you know, any forms of prejudice, extremism, and hate. You know, we live in this fast-paced society. I mean, it doesn't have to be fast-paced. It is, right? Like, you see it all on social media. Just, it's a crazy, crazy world. But this book definitely is a book of hope. I was wondering about the characters. How far into the story did you decide the names? Because I know you do research for your books, and this novel was no different. But I was so curious. I'm always curious about character names in books. So, yeah.
That's a great and quite scary question. Well, Wairere was suggested to me by someone close to me as a name, as waterfall, flowing water, and so it couldn't get closer to Wairere's place in the novel. So for the listeners, Wairere is a 14-year-old. She has a almost symbiotic relationship with the swamp, who is also a character in the novel. Swamp Mother, who she becomes in the end, just came to me when I was writing. I had a week at the Michael King Writers Centre, and so that's one of those things when you're writing, you don't know what's coming, and she just appeared on the page with that name. And Wairere was suggested to me. It was perfect. Kiri, I don't know. I mean, Katie Hume died around the time I was writing, so I might have just gone, this is for Kitty. I don't know. I actually can't remember. Janet is the white lady with an opinion about everything, and that needs no explanation. Everybody seems to know a Janet.
Yes.
I knew a lot of Janets growing up.
I was reading it going, I know a Janet.
Yeah.
Okay, Janet, we see you.
Yeah. There's certain names that work with that. So and I mean, I'm happy with Janet because she was a challenge. Like, I was like, how am I going to write this woman that a lot of us know and don't want to spend time with? But she came through with her own with her own personality, I think she managed to be endearing in her opinions. Sometimes they were so, she was so off, she didn't have empathy in the right places and stuff. But I think in the end, I mean, that's the hope, isn't it? I always felt like Janet in a way, even though Wairere is the heart of the novel, I always felt like Janet is almost the center of it, because she was the one who I wanted to have the biggest learning curve. Her son is Connor. I think I was looking for something from that kind of, I give a bit of their ancestry, and I wanted something from, I think, was there a bit of Irish or something in there? So I just wanted, I wanted her to have a little bit of an interest in that. But yeah, her son is beyond redemption in some ways. So I wanted her to have the possibility of redemption. I don't want to give too much away, but that's the kind of dynamic I was looking for. The hardest names were for the refugee whānau. So I didn't name where they were from in the end, because it was a place that was becoming unlivable in ecological terms. Someone said to me, "Oh, that wouldn't be very fair, would it?" And I thought, yeah, that's true. But also, of course, my own ability to recreate a place I haven't been, and then to say, "Oh, this place is going to disappear." No, I didn't feel like I had the right to do that. I also felt like we all know the story of what's happening to refugee populations now, and we're all at risk of that, whether we feel it or not. And so I wanted that to be, whether you imagine, I said they're from the Mediterranean, but whether you imagine her from which country, it's like some of them are quite Western, what we'd think of as countries akin to our own, or, but they're becoming, ecological disaster is hitting us in all of these places. So I left that open. So I therefore wanted her and her family to have names that could be from different cultures. So her name is Sara, Sera, which is a different form of the name Sarah. Adam, again, these names go across different cultures, and their daughter Aliana. So I kept looking for different names, and then I'd realize, oh, that name has different associations, and I didn't want to make the associations too strong, but I wanted them to be transferable, which sounds terrible. But I just wanted them. I wanted people to identify with them or understand that it could be any of us,
Yeah, I like that you shared the resources at the end there of the book. Like, I was curious about many things. So when you had listed, hey, these are some of the resources that I used, especially looking at lived experiences of refugees, far-right extremism, radicalization, that, I think Connor's character was the one that I like reading the story through his actions and his behavior. Like, I could see that, like, when sometimes you're just like online and you're reading threads and stuff like that, and I'm just thinking, this is a little bit crazy here. It's just the things that people believe and that are led to believe. Like, it's just people are easily led astray because there's just a lot of that extreme information. People are easily recruited into those environments because they're looking for a sense of belonging. They're looking for a place that accepts them as they are. So as I'm watching the story, reading the story and how it's playing out through his eyes, I'm like, yeah, I get this. Like, I get how this could happen. And then thinking back to 2019 and the terror attacks in New Zealand. I mean, I was here, my school in Tokyo. Our teacher librarian in the elementary school library, she turned on the Apple TV, and I took my class down there and we watched the service together. Like, we were kind of both still stunned living here, but seeing that play out. So all these things I'm thinking about this as I'm reading the book. Not just that, I mean, as you said, there's just a lot going on, not just around that time leading up to and after, but coming out of COVID and just even now the political environment in New Zealand or climate in New Zealand, it's just so, all of this is playing out in front of us, and then I guess living overseas, seeing this, it's a little bit scary. So I did go right off course there, but just to say
Yeah,
that,
no, you're
yeah,
100%. You're 100% right about about him. Again, I was hopeful that these things would come through, but they did. He is seeking community. He's seeking connection, and he's never had it. And I, having been brought up in a Pākehā family for 16 years before reconnecting with my Māori family, I know what that's like. It's not. It's like so much has been thrown away from dare I say it, Pākehā culture, that if they don't reconnect, this is the danger, right? You can reconnect with the wrong thing. You can find a different way to find community and identity and strength. And then as I was writing it, we had the so-called protests at Parliament where everything was so warped and extreme, threatening Jacinda Ardern and her child. What on earth is... So I felt with writing the book, the world was much more extreme than I could write in a book. And I say that at the end too. I'm like, I'm not going to try and recreate the way these people really behave online. I tried to give enough of a hint of it that the reader would feel the chill of it, but I wasn't going to recreate the language. I noted those books because there's been some amazing writing done, and I should name check those books about extremism. Julia Ebner, Going Dark, she's written a second one now, The Social Lives of Extremists, and Talia Lavin, Culture Warlords, My Journey into the Dark Web of White Supremacy, and of course New Zealand's Byron Clark, Fear, New Zealand's Hostile Underworld of Extremists. Now those books I put there because I wasn't going to put in my book the real stuff that goes on. In fiction, you've actually got to walk this fine line of convincing the reader, of keeping it convincing. And if it's too extreme, the reader goes, what? Do people really behave that way? And so I spent a lot of time with Connor thinking, why are you doing this, Connor? Why do you say these things? Why do you believe these things? And I had to make myself convinced that. So that's kind of the line I was walking with Connor was, there's got to be a reason why people are believing these things and acting out this way. And that reason, more than intellectual, because surely if they thought about it enough, they'd be like, people are people. How can you decide that? Even this, I was watching Golriz Garaman's interview with John Campbell yesterday, talking about the kind of vile stuff. Well, she can't even talk about the stuff that she gets in the mail. I'm like, who are these people that are posting these things online or sending these death threats or rape threats? Who are these people? So with Connor, I really had to, because I don't know, I don't understand it, but I really had to find a point of connection with him myself so that the reader could also find a point of connection. And for me, that was, he has a really deep emotional reason for wanting to belong to this white supremacist group. They give him something that he's never had in real life. And he kind of says, and he gets into it, and then he's just like, I'll do anything to stay in this group, to be part of this. I want to be part of this. This is a big thing, and I think about those people, it's a big feeling.
I want to say a big yay because there's an audiobook. I'm a huge advocate for audiobooks. It is narrated by Stacey Leilua. If you are, again, listening, click on the links in the bio, get your copy, or if you don't want to hold a physical book, I think there's an ebook as well, but there's definitely an audiobook. So click on the links and purchase, support, what we say on here, support Māori and Pasifika authors. Always uplifting our stories, our writers. We need more. We need more Māori and Pasifika just writing these stories. It's important. This work needs to be done. So, I'm glad that you are doing that part for the community. I didn't even know where you get the time to write. That was my other question. Where do you get the time to write? Because you're a lecturer, you're doing your part for education. So when do you find the time to write?
I was very lucky with this book. So up until now, where did I get? Well, the first two books I wrote in courses. Again, that's I guess education has been good to me because it's given me those spaces where I write something, and then once you've got the body of something, you can do it in your spare time. For me, I can't do it from scratch in my spare time, but and I will admit that one of the reasons I was kind of chronically burnt out was because I just never took a weekend for a number of years. I just worked and worked and worked. So I would spend weekends either promoting books or writing books, and evening, like I wasn't taking the time out that we should take out. So that's how the first few books got done. And then this one, I'm lucky enough to be a lecturer, which means that I can apply for research leave, and research leave in my particular discipline means writing a book. So I got to do that. I got a residency at Canterbury University as the Ursula Bethel writer in residence, and that, I mean, those things are just so fantastic and so needed because it won't happen without that kind of support. We need spaces. I need a good year. That took me a year, and then lots and lots of work on editing and rewriting. Last summer I spent rewriting, like doing edits. So yeah. If you like your holidays.
If you like your holidays, right? I suppose it helps being an educator because you must mark a lot of essays and projects and things like that. So naturally, you're just good at editing and proofreading. Yeah, no.
I think I am. I like to tell my students what to do, and then I look at my own work and it's been edited, and I'm like, oh, apparently I don't know where to put a comma. I thought I did, but okay.
I like to ask guests, I've had some amazing women on the show, and I like to ask them, when you go into meetings, what is your power suit like? What is the outfit that you wear, or a special taonga, something special you take with you to turn up to those meetings with the big execs or to the big people, the ones making the decisions? So Tina, what is your power suit or something that you take with you?
Yeah, it's such a cool question. And I think we all have, especially Pasifika Maori people, I think we do that, right? I definitely, if I'm worried about something, I definitely do take a deep breath and talk to my people on the other side, and kind of go, okay, look after me now, and please, and thank you, and be with me, and remind me who I am. And then the taonga that I like to wear when I'm sometimes I like to wear her when I'm not worried about a situation, because I don't want her just to be my thing, but I think of her as kind of like she's got sharp teeth, and she's watching. So it's this taonga here, which is so this is the eye at the center. This is a manaya, but she's got two mouths coming this way, and these are the teeth, and this kind of looks like a beak, but it's not a bird, it is a manaya. So it's a really powerful, where can I put it so that you can see it against the black? Here, see it in front of a copy of my book. So
nice.
And yeah, this was given to me actually for my PhD graduation, which I wasn't expecting. The university gave it to me, which is odd for it to be a taonga with so much meaning. But then a couple of years later, I had a student who actually chose it for me in her capacity as someone who works at the university, and so that was really cool to get to know the person who found it. And it was so interesting because they give taonga to everyone, but I looked at this one and it immediately had meaning for me, and I've written about this in that as a writer I always feel like, so there's this eye at the center, but I always feel like we're looking in two directions, or we're speaking with two mouths, or that act of translating or going between worlds from the to pour the darkness to Te Ao Marama, to the light. I always feel like we're doing that. We're speaking with two mouths, I called it. So it immediately meant something to me as a writer. So that's why I wear it. And also I just feel like, I don't know, it's a very powerful taonga to me. So that's what I like to wear. Going into battle, I think of it.
Going into battle, yes. That's it.
Always. But now I'm in trouble because if I ever wear it, people are going to be like, "Oh, Tina's on the warpath. What's going on?"
Here she comes. Watch out.
Sometimes it's just if I'm feeling insecure or I'm just not feeling like doing the big thing. You might have a big thing on, and you're just like, I don't feel like doing this today, or I don't know who's going to be in this room. It's not about like having a fight. It's just about like getting that power that taonga gives you.
Can you hold up the Mires book again? There we go, everyone. The Mires.
What am I doing here?
Yes. There we go. Purchase your copy. You will not regret it. Do you have any book recommendations other than plugging the Mires?
Yeah, obviously, yeah, no, I do have, and I have to just get those.
That's okay. Take your
time. Because I was like, I got one, and then I was like, oh, I've got to get that one. Oh no, I've got to get that one. So my first one is Little Doomsdays by Nick Lowe and Phil Dadson. Phil Dadson is the artist, so you can see how beautiful this is. And I'm just like, because this screen is backwards, I keep going in the wrong direction. Sorry about that. So it's just beautiful. The writing is, I mean, Nick Lowe, he's writing a novel at the moment. He's got the residency that I had when I wrote The Mires. And he is just a beautiful, I'm just showing the pictures, but he's such a great writer. And this book, because it's a bit of an arty book, I feel like it's gone under the radar. And I feel like Nick's work has gone under the radar. He's Ngai Tahu. I feel like his work has gone under the radar quite a lot in terms of just missing its moment. So his next novel, I have to say, is going to be huge. It's the most amazing story. I'm not going to give away what it is, but look how beautifully this is done.
Wow.
So this book is, he talks about the different arcs of knowledge, and it's just this beautiful, beautiful, mythical, but also futuristic fable, which I just love. But I think Nick is very good at the futuristic mythical. And again, it comes from that kind of, I think it comes from that mixed whakapapa, where you've got all these different stories from different sides, and he also he did the book Uprising, which is about climbing, all the mountains in the south, the Southern Alps, and the journeys following the ancestors through there. So he is an amazing writer. The other book, so I'm reading two books for some events I'm doing coming up. One is Hine Toa Ngahuia Te Awe Kotaku, who I've already read it because I did a little bit of a blurb on the back, which I'll just tell you that because that's actually what I think of it. Brilliant, this timely coming of age memoir by an iconic activist. It will rouse the rebel in us all. I loved it, and I really did. I said to Ngahuia afterwards, is it just one? Is there more? Because it just is it's her youth. It's when she first was, I guess, becoming who she is, who is this incredible activist, who, I don't know, she was just one out of the box. She was so different from the beginning, and the stories that she tells about how she came to be who she was, just an incredible story. She's one of my heroes. So I feel very lucky to also know her as a person, and I think everybody will.
Is that recently released, or it's been out for a while now?
No, it was out this year. So HarperCollins. Yeah.
How did I
so
miss
if you
that?
haven't seen it, Rosa, you must.
I know. I'm like, what? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she's just iconic, the most iconic activist, right? So she also writes fiction, which she hasn't had as much published, but I know there's stuff that I would love to see coming into the world. I'm also doing an event with Bariz, Shah. What an extraordinary story. Again, I'll just put the whole title there. from an Auckland prison to changing lives in Afghanistan. One of the reasons for the Mires is I find the story of, I think that Maori people, Indigenous people, and refugee people have so much, and of course the way we are supporting each other and the Palestinian, what's happening in Palestine and other things is there, but I feel like we have so much in common, and I just have so much aroha for people being displaced and dislocated. My ancestors were displaced and dislocated within Aotearoa. But to be pushed out of your country, and the hardest thing I think is the way they're treated when they get to our countries. And I don't understand why we let that happen, and why, particularly the idea of treating people who have been displaced like criminals, or like they don't deserve empathy. So, I mean, this is an extraordinary story. I would recommend reading that. I'm listening to it as well. So I've got the book, but then I was like, oh, I need something to listen to while I'm walking. So I listened to it. It's beautiful, incredible story. And then finally, just for fun, because I'm just doing lots of fun. And like I said, I want to write short stories that are just for fun. And this is dark, but fun. It's kind of fairy tale as well. But yeah, it's got a beautiful voice. Like the voice is really compelling, and it just kind of drives you through, like drives you along. Like very fairy tale. Like I love fairy tales. So that's my fun book.
I love those book recommendations. If you are tuning in, you will see the book banner that is at the bottom of the screen. It features all the books that Tina has just shared. It will also feature Tina's writing and, of course, the Mires. So check the book banner. The extensive list will be on my Instagram, as well as the links where you can purchase the books. And hopefully, if I can find some social media connection, there'll be a link to connect with the authors. So you know how we do, check the book banner. It's actually not there now, but it'll be there once I edit. I'll edit this up. So yeah, check it out, fam, if you are tuning in. Wow, those books, those authors. I'm like, how do I not know this? I thought I was ahead of the game. Apparently not. So I look forward to looking
I
up
think you're
these
ahead of the
books.
game. I think this podcast is amazing that you're doing. I look at your list and I go, oh, I haven't heard of lots of these people, and then I think, oh gosh, I need to catch up. Yeah, for sure.
There are so many amazing Pacific Islanders, Māori, creatives, writers, business people, educators, athletes. So many stories that don't get a platform, and I like to do that. Like I like to bring folks like yourself on here. Actually, I don't. It's such an honor to have you here. Like I that's still so crazy to me that you are here doing this podcast, Tina. It's just
I'm lucky. I'm lucky to be here.
So I ask all guests self-care. How do you take care? Because you are busy, like all these other inspirational folks that I've had come on the show, and they're like, actually, I'm not really good with self-care. I'm too busy. But yeah.
Yeah, and I have been very bad at self-care those years when I wasn't taking time out. But now I kind of treat it. You have to treat it like part of the job, I think. Like, that makes it sound dreary, but like I have to program it in. I have to program in. I'm going to take that time out. I'm going to do nothing this day. This is my nothing day. I really try to do a nothing day once a week, and I'm not always successful. But at least doing a nothing with the brain day. And then sometimes I've gotten so good at it, sometimes I'm like, I'll just take one day off this week, and then I just don't do anything for the whole weekend. And I forgive myself immediately for not doing anything. I feel like I'm always running to catch up, but to be honest, I was always running to catch up when I worked 7 days. So it doesn't make any difference. Like, it's very, very hard to form habits. That's the problem, is once you're in the habit of working all the time, it's very hard to get in the habit of resting as much as you should. But yeah, like I try to make going for a walk, doing some yoga, part of the routine. And it really, really makes a difference. And only a little bit. I have learned, because in my head it used to be, for it to mean anything, you have to do an hour of yoga. I did 10 minutes of yoga for like 2 years. Not every day, but almost, quite a lot, because 10 minutes of yoga I can do. And for a while, when I was quite unwell, I couldn't really do more than 10 minutes. So getting in 10 minutes actually makes a huge difference. I am not a morning person, so sometimes I just let myself sleep in the morning, which is, I guess, not really a professional look. But then we're living. Why is it more professional to get up early and do your work early? I don't know. I'm like getting sleep. Sorry, I'll go on and on. Eating well. These are all on my list, along with the student work that I need to do and the editing work that I need to do and the promotional work. It's all on my list. So I don't think it gets any easier. You have to kind of really put yourself first. And sometimes, like this weekend, I am having a day without mental work, but because of the moment I'm in, where I'm doing my taxes and moving house and talking to you, and which is not work, it's lovely, but also it takes time, and a bunch of other stuff. Even though it's Matariki, I've actually haven't been able to like take the proper time out, and that just happens sometimes. So again, forgive yourself. We are so unforgiving of ourselves, eh?
Very true. Very true. I'm a teacher, so yes, absolutely. I didn't even have anything to say to that, because it's just true. That's everything you said it resonated, and I asked this question because it's always a reminder to myself. I should be taking the advice and refilling my cup and getting sleep. Or like, I'm the opposite. I'm a morning person, so I set my alarm, and it doesn't matter how tired, how very little sleep I've had, I get up when the alarm goes. But when I'm listening to you, I'm like, okay, it's summer break now. We'll just turn off my alarm.
Turn off my
alarms, because I didn't need to do anything in summer. Well, I do have a lot of work to do, but that later.
Yeah.
So as we begin to wrap up the show, you've the Mires, everyone, the Mires by Tina Makereti. It is dropping. Is it July 3rd or July 2nd? July 3rd.
I think it's the 2nd in Australia and the 3rd in Aotearoa. So I think I got confused as well.
So it's, I think, well, we'll just say in a few days, it is going to be available. It will be out in the world. Get your copy. You will not regret it. Support Māori authors. Like, come on, guys. Let's do this. Are there any upcoming chats or appearances or book launches that you want to mention before we close up? Just for anyone who's listening, they can check out.
Yeah. So I was thinking I couldn't say where I was talking to Ngahuia and Bariz, but that's at Word Festival. So I'm doing there's a session, just me talking with Nick. I'm not promoting that book just because he's my mate as well. He's like amazing. So I was like, I was sending him fan mail just recently. So
you're giving him his flowers, and that's okay.
Yeah. So I'm lucky enough that he will be talking to me, because he's also a really great host at Word Festival. I can say this because it's being announced on the same day that this is coming out. And I'm interviewing Ngahuia, so that's just I will have the same kind of like, I'm talking to one of my heroes, which I always have with her. I always have to go, I have to take deep breaths. I will probably wear this, and it's not because I'm going into battle, it's just to give me kaha, to just represent her the best, like you say, give her the flowers. There's a wonderful talk with Mahdis, Azarmandi, Bariz, Shah, and beautiful Palestinian poet Sara and I might have got her surname wrong, but that is happening at Word as well.
Nice.
And there's some incredible Māori authors at Word this year. It is like, it's brown ass. It's awesome.
Yay.
Some amazing Pasifika work, Savage Colonizer is coming a little bit after the main festival, but like, oh, it's going to be amazing. And I'm also talking in Wellington on the 10th of July at Unity Books at lunchtime. And then there's something in mid-August at Writers on Mondays. So there's some stuff coming up. Yeah.
Yep, but you can connect with Tina, follow her on her social media platforms. I will post links for those appearances in the bio. Exciting. So I'm excited. And have you started writing the short stories that you're talking about, or is it still here?
I'm still finishing editing, and actually I've got a book of essays coming out in February with Heading a Waka Press. I know, that was... So it's quite funny because it looks like I've been really prolific lately, but actually that was kind of finished in 2020. But then for personal reasons, I wasn't ready to publish it yet. And I was waiting. I'll probably talk about it when it comes out, but now it's coming out on the heels of this novel. So I'm editing that right now. So I don't really have time to think about my short stories, but maybe this summer I will, because short stories are so fun. They're just so fun. Yeah.
She means Southern Hemisphere summer, everyone, if you're wondering.
Yeah.
It's summer for us. It's nearly summer here where I live, but we're talking New Zealand summer, like end of the year, good times.
December, January.
Yeah. So if you're tuning in, look out for new work. Exciting coming from Tina. Okay, man. I need to let you go. You've got a gazillion things to do, Tina. I just want to say, first of all, huge shout out to Zoe from Ultimo Press. I think I said that wrong. Sorry. But she is the media officer there, and she was responsible for making this happen, organizing with Tina, getting a time for this recording to take place. And you, Tina, wonderful, amazing, inspirational educator, writer that you are, advocate. I just appreciate you for coming on little old ReadswithRosa podcast. Like, it's insane to me. I'm still I appreciate you. And
I feel like your podcast is going to be the place to be for writers. It's going to be like, I want to get on Rosa's podcast, because it's like, it's amazing who you've had on here. So kia ora.
So just giving you your flowers and wishing you all the best for the remainder of 2024. Final words, I'm going to hand it back to you just to wrap up the show. And kia ora.
Oh, final words. Oh gosh, now I've got to say something meaningful and deep.
Yes.
Just Māori order, just read, people, like, just enjoy the stories. Like, I think, okay, I have got something I want to say, which is, I think our literature we are having dark times, I think we were talking about earlier, and our literature, our art, it's the one way we have to, other than connecting with each other face to face, it's the one way we have to keep ourselves, like, to keep that special part of ourselves and to reconnect with each other. So the fact that I can connect with you through my writing is the most amazing thing that I could hope for. So, but also that solace, that, I don't know, making ourselves remind ourselves that we're human. Because, if you look at the politics, if you look at the state of things, if you look at the media, you can forget that. So, our arts do that for us. And so I'm really, it's a total dream to be part of that in any way. Yeah, kia ora. Māori order.